Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the coming commercial real estate shortage. Yes, a shortage in commercial real estate. Now, I know this is very difficult for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, considering what the condition of the commercial real estate market is in today. But really, when you think about it and you understand the bullwhip effect, it really starts to make a lot more sense. So what's happening within the commercial real estate market right now is that there was a huge overbuild of commercial real estate. And now the work from home, no longer in the office, or failing to return to the office, stuff like that has put a huge burden on the commercial real estate market, meaning that the rents that these buildings would normally charge have fallen dramatically. But something very interesting has also taken place within this particular market, and that is the newer buildings have a demand. All right? The older buildings, the older like 3-5-year-old buildings, those ones have fallen in demand. But the newer buildings have increased. Now, this is something very interesting to think about, because when it comes to investment into new commercial real estate, if you have rents falling, the demand from the investment side begins to fall. Like, the investors are like, hey, I'm not going to participate in this game if the rents are falling. Like, if rents are increasing, then we know we can put our money towards something. If we invest our money towards this, we know that once the project is completed or the purchase of this particular project has been done, that the rents will then pay us back our principal plus, a little bit of a yield. Now, if you're looking at a building that has rents falling, that backs investors away. They're like, man, we're not touching this stuff. And then if you're an investor who is looking to build new buildings, but yet the idea that rents are falling on commercial real estate, your ambition to start new projects falls again dramatically, as the idea that rents are just not going to be there in order to pay for this new building that you're about ready to put together. So now this is really where the bullwhip effect starts to take place, because of this idea that there is a lack of available rent increases coming to the future. I think that's probably the easiest way to understand it, because it's not just a matter of where the rents are, but whether or not the rents are going to increase, or whether or not you think that you're going to be able to get the rent that you need in order to pay back your loan and get the yield, right? I mean, that's really what this comes down to. So if that rent isn't there, or the idea that rent increases won't be there, then the investment probably won't come into it either. Even if there is demand for the newer buildings, which we are seeing, and according to the article, the fact that the rest of the commercial real estate market out there has no demand for it is where the investors don't want to participate anymore. And if they're not coming in, then there's no new buildings coming in. That's the gap in production that we are looking for if you are following the bullwhip effect, or the bullwhip effect theory, right? So if you have a gap in production like we are about ready to experience here within the commercial real estate, here in 3 to 5 years, there's going to be demand for this particular, type of real estate, the newer commercial buildings, but there's not a lot of production taking place. What happens? Prices shoot up. What happens to the builders who put these buildings together, right? All of a sudden, they're in the money, right? Because there's not a lot of product out there and there's a huge demand for it. And this I can see coming to the commercial real estate market here in the next few years. Right now, when you look at it, it's just in shambles. Nobody would want to touch the commercial real estate market with a 10-foot pole. But you consider that there is a gap in production that's about ready to take place due to the investment, the low investment going into the commercial real estate due to the fact that the rents are down. Right? Does all that kind of make sense? This is something that, once you understand the bullwhip effect and you see it take place within other industries, it makes so much more sense to understand. Like, people say, like, right now the commercial real estate market is in complete shambles, which it is. But if you see it, you can see where that gap in production is actually going to create higher prices and a demand going into the future. You can position yourself right for that. Don't ask me how, just saying that that's a possibility going on out there. And it's not just in like real estate. You can see it in all kinds of stuff. Like I pointed it out in lumber, a couple of years ago. But right now, if you go and take a look at, like, say, the beef industry here in the United States, we're importing more beef into the United States than I think we've ever have. I'm not sure if that's an actual record or if it's just in recent history, but we're importing a lot of beef into this country. Now, you think about this, if we're importing a lot of beef into the country, that's other people around the world who won't have access to that beef. So this is something that I've was kind of keying in on. I'm like, well, how dramatic is this really, right? Because if you think about it, if you're importing beef into the nation, right, then that's other nations around the world who suffer with the idea that they don't get that beef, right? The United States is probably paying the top dollar for it, so that means beef prices around the world will go up dramatically, right? Considering that it's being imported into the United States. I mean, this is where beef prices really shoot up. Now, of course, you can put a lot of blame on, say, like environmental issues, right? There was major droughts taking place, and a lot of people couldn't, the farmers out there just simply couldn't keep their herds hydrated, and so they had to cull them out. So there was a huge drop in the amount of beef stock out there, or beef herd, livestock herds, due to that particular situation. But it doesn't really matter what the reasoning behind it is. It's the fact that it's taken place, and that gap in production has now driven the demand for beef in this country up, that we are actually importing it from other nations on a record number, and the prices are going to move up from that. Once the prices move up, think about this, once they're up and people are looking at beef prices going, oh my gosh, look how expensive they are, even though they don't really seem to be that expensive right now. Like I picked up tri-tip cheaper than I could pick up ground beef yesterday. But at some point, you're going to see the prices move up. Once they do, the investment that goes into that, people are going to say, hey, as an investor, I can put some money towards this. Look how much the beef prices are. We can get a particular yield out of it. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of investment starts moving into the production of beef, right? And then what happens? Overproduction of beef. Now, we can see this scenario taking place in, I believe, Australia with the lamb herds, with the lamb, right? So these sheep herds, or flocks, I guess is what they're referred to as, are in overabundance in Australia, like to the point that they're just giving these animals away. They're like, we don't even need them anymore. We don't want them. There's too many of them, and the price has fallen dramatically. Well, again, if you just take it back a few years, you had an environmental impact, one, right? The rains were just, I guess, pretty heavy during those particular years, which created some very abundant pasture lands, which gave these animals more feed in order to, actually produce bigger flocks with, right? Because now there's more grass for these animals to eat. At the same time, the price of this stuff had gone up because of the shortages that were taking place during the lockdowns, right? So here you had lamb prices up, you had this really rainy season coming in, and you had a lot of investment taking place going into this particular industry. All of a sudden, they produced way too many animals, and now they have to cull them out because the prices of them have just fallen, and these farmers are suffering without the ability to profit from their product. Right? And so we can see this again. It's just happening in all kinds of industries. Let me see. I'm sure I got another one that I was wanting to share with you guys. I had a few links and I didn't write them down. What was the other industry that I had noticed it in? Anyway, I left a few links down there in the description for you guys. You can go check them all out. Just wanted to bring this one up so that we can see that how this bullwhip effect is really taking place, right? As people are looking at the commercial real estate market and thinking, oh, that's what it was. It was the shipping containers. Shipping containers have fallen dramatically in price as well. That was the other part of it. So you can see it happening in real estate. You can see it happening within the agriculture. You're seeing it happening within transportation, within like the supply chains. So when you have container prices falling as dramatically as they are, this was a major input cost going into the inflation scenario that a lot of people were experiencing over the last couple of years. Was literally like how much it costs to get this particular product from a foreign country into the United States. And because those prices are falling dramatically, this again is going to create a bullwhip effect within this particular industry. Because you have to think, when there was a shortage of shipping containers, there was all of a sudden a big demand for the construction of these shipping containers. Now there's an overabundance of these things and the prices of them are falling. Same thing with the actual ships that carry these things, like the freight liners. There was, again, like shortages of freight liners. You remember all these freight liners stuck off the coast of LA. Well, when those freight liners are stuck off the coast of LA, the demand for it goes up. Well, the shipbuilders start building ships. Well, all of a sudden we've realized that there's this overcapacity, right? All these ships are not needed as much as they once were, and there's new ones coming online. What happens to the price? It falls, right? And then we end up seeing a lot of scrapping of other ships and stuff like that. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I kind of rambled on in this video, but I think you kind of get the point about the bullwhip effect and how it's impacting different industries in different ways at different times. And I think that's very important to understand. A lot of people don't even look at the bullwhip effect and they just want to blame it on politics or something like that. But really, when you understand the bullwhip effect from the distribution, the manufacturing, in the end up sales or the retail end of things, and you see the gap in production that happens in this, it really starts to make sense. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Uneducated economist rambling on in the afternoon. You guys let me know.